The spies came back. 10 of them said, "There are giants in the land. We cannot go up." There were 2 spies with a different spirit. They said, "God's promises are true. The covenant he gave to our forefathers is still valid." The world says, "We must give land for peace." We say, "Christians must stand with Judea and Samaria." The world presents a biased and negative representation. It is now time for the Joshua and Caleb Report. Stories from the heartland of Israel.
Okay, first of all, I was born and raised in a very Zionistic home, an Orthodox Jew. But there, as you all know, there are different kinds of Orthodox Jews. Some are much more pro-Zionism, and others that are praying about Messiah, but I guess they're not waiting for it, but not doing it. We believe in doing it. My parents always spoke about moving to Israel one day. I remember my father's dream was after the 6-Day War, he said he wants to buy a house, he wants to buy some property in Israel, and the house, we grew up as children, my 3 sisters, of loving the land and always with that dream of returning home. And so although I grew up, again, I was raised in yeshiva. You know what yeshiva is?
Right. Oh, yeah.
So I grew up in yeshiva education. I moved around from different schools. I wasn't the best student in the world. I was too I wasn't too focused as a child.
No way.
I can't imagine until I got to high school that I really started finding myself. But at a very young age, I had an inner call to return to the land. When I recall I must have been around 6 years old, and I've told this story many times. But it was like I call it a prophecy, a personal vision. And I was sitting with my cousins in the Catskill Mountains in the vacation, and everyone was talking about what they're going to do in the future. And I said, I see myself one day living in a beautiful place with hilltops and winding hills and beautiful dirt roads, whatever it is. And believe it or not, this is Itamar.
Wait, this is at 6 years old?
I was 6 years old.
Wow. You were a big dreamer at that point.
Right. But anyway, when I was 6 years old, I finally went through high school, and as a matter of fact, in my last year of high school, I took a year off to go to Israel. It was a special program, and I was, again, a few kids from the school, most kids would stay behind, but a few students were chosen to spend the last part of the year in Israel, half a year, and we studied, and I never forget my first time getting off the plane. I was 17 at the time, and everything I dreamed about came true, just getting off the plane, walking down that ladder off the plane. In those days, it wasn't coming out into the terminal, but you first go down the ladder and that bus would take you to the, it was wild. We just got down there, sat down, kissed the ground. And
so, Mr. Moshe, you grew up as a religious Zionist, yes. Correct? So you were very much you're in the States and you're really wanting to, but Miss Leah, did you grow up with that same kind of growing up?
So I was brought up exactly, I would say, pretty much in the same framework, only my conditions were a little different. My father was a Holocaust survivor, and his family and hundreds of thousands of Jews, literally, only him and 2 other survivors. And in his spare time, he would go and lecture about his personal story in the Holocaust in universities, and I would go along with him, and I would accompany him, and I would listen to his story, and I never tired of it. But as I listened to his story, and simultaneously, I would be going to demonstrate for the Russian Jews to get out of the Iron Curtain. All this backdrop of my life definitely had me asking questions, because as we were Apple Pie, Chevrolet, That 70s Show, Led Zeppelin, The Who, you name it, the whole typical American identity. But as that was happening, there were other things going on, like here I am demonstrating to let Jews out of another country, but here I am in another country. I'm not in Israel. How could this be? And of course, when you're a teenager, you're not in control of your destiny, obviously. But as soon as I was able to, I also went to Israel just like he did. When I finished high school, and I was there for a year, and that profoundly made me totally decide that no, I wasn't crazy. Everyone else was crazy for not living there. And God brought us together. That's a whole story in itself because we were childhood friends. So, but we hadn't seen each other for many years. And then he came back from Israel, I came back from Israel, put us together. And the first word that we said to each other was Israel.
Wow. So where was Aliyah in this whole story?
So his parents wanted him to finish school. He was a biology major. I was working for the Jewish agency in Manhattan. And as soon as he had his diploma, our wedding was the biggest goodbye party to all of our friends, all of our family. You have to know that in the mid-'80s, people were not making Aliyah. It was like, these crazies. But it wasn't enough that we wanted to make Aliyah. We wanted to become pioneers. Right. So here I'm like walking down like from Bloomingdale's with my 10-inch high heels, you know, getting ready to make Aliyah with my briefcase. And we find ourselves on this bald hilltop in the middle of nowhere. The wind blowing all around. And we put down our stuff and like, honey, we're home. And literally, God placed us in this awesome territory. Awesome.
So once you got here, Moshe, what did you begin to? How did you make this home?
Okay, when we got to Itamar, first of all, the first year, or a little less than a year, we spent in Jerusalem. First of all, and Leah and we discussed it together that we wanted to do something improving our spirituality and connection to God. So we both decided, what do you do? How do you improve your spirituality? You got to go to yeshiva. So she went to a girls' yeshiva, and I went to a guys' yeshiva. That's what we did. And at the same year, we used that as a base in Jerusalem to go find a place to live. But we decided that we just fell in love with this place. We came here for a Shabbat weekend, and it was only just at that time a handful of families, talking about 10 families living there. And we decided that we fell in love with the place when we arrived. And we decided this is where we're going to join. And we joined that first nucleus. And it was a program. I was studying biology. I was a pre-med student. I came to Israel, my whole life changed. I had to make a decision. What am I going to do with my life? 21 years old, got to decide what you're going to do. You know, I have to learn a profession. That's what I was taught as Jewish. You got to, you know, your mother wants you to do something.
To become a doctor or a lawyer.
Right. To become a settler. So we became these pioneers, and I decided to spend more time studying in yeshiva, in a nearby community called Elon Moreh. You know, is that you guys know where there? Is that too far from here? I joined the program, and I ended up studying 13 years in that program, becoming a rabbi and a teacher in that program. And Leah at the same time she'll tell you about what she was doing.
So the question I have, just really quick, is so your first experiences when you stepped into Itamar, like you were talking about, what was the greatest obstacle that you had to overcome, but also just like on a practical level, what was the greatest joy that like something you think back, like what was the thing that you remember doing the most?
I think that the obstacles were probably the source of the joy.
Okay.
Because as people were living their lives in America and very static, cushiony, you know, how are you? All right. And I'm like jumping for joy. But I wasn't sitting on a cushion, and there were worlds of challenges every day. If you're asking on a practical level, well, when our first baby was born, we had 4 hours of electricity from the generator a day and 4 hours at night, which meant that I would have to wrap her up in a blanket and just hold her close to me to keep her warm. And I mean, you're talking about, you know, going back to the 80s, there was one telephone for the entire community. And I would like take a huge bag of these phone coins and like put one in after the other just to call him, because he was in the army. He was drafted, and I was home here on Itamar. So sometimes I would get through, sometimes I would get a little note sent to the office of the community. Leah, everything's fine, but it was 3 days old. And in those days, we used to, and it was a very spiritual feeling to go out and, you know, hear the wind through the trees, and you're thinking about someone, you're connecting with someone. And it's sad in a way that today everyone just pulls out their whatever, smartphones or whatever, and, you know, what happened to that old I can't believe I'm talking about my own self as an old world, but what happened to that old world? Right. And we lived in that old world, and it was a very precious time. There were dirt roads, so there wasn't much transportation going in and out. So that even though we really live from the coast, which is to our west, and to Jerusalem, which is to our south, if you were depending on public transportation, that would be once a day. So that we were really like...
So you didn't own a car?
In the beginning, no.
So did you have a donkey or a camel?
We have plenty of cats. Plenty of cats. And, what we really loved to do was just to walk out into nature. And in those days, before Oslo, before this peace process, accelerated into all the violence that followed it, in those days, we just walked and walked. And you could walk to Shiloh, and it would be fine. And here we were living in God's land. I mean, you talk about a Bible Belt. This is the Bible Belt of the world. And try to describe it. You're asking what was I challenged with? Actually trying to describe our life to our friends in America. I really don't think many people got it. Yeah. But you know what's a miracle is that, you look at a rock and what do you think? Could anything change on this rock? Right. You know what it is to see a grapevine growing out of a rock? Yeah. That's living prophecy. Right. So that your testimony, you go back and you say, I've seen this land come alive since I'm living here. I mean, you can't, with everything going on in the world and all the odds against us in all realms, if it's the European Union, if it's the policies against what they call the West Bank, which we know is God's heartland, if it's any kind of anti-Semitism by saying, okay, we'll have peace as long as the Jews aren't living on God's land, all of those odds against us, but then you come with your testimony and you say, that grapevine is growing out of that rock, and it's winning international awards in wine contests, then you know that prophecy is coming true. Right. So that God does reveal his face. So I
guess that brings you to the next thing. Obviously this is, what we do, that's our passion. So the incredible thing about what you're saying is that the moment that you feel down, the moment that you feel like it's a hopeless run, all you have to do is look up and look around you and say, this is what God is doing. And this is what, it's like, I feel that every morning when I wake up, I'm here in the land, and I look out my window, and I look around me, and I see the amazing things that are taking place. It's like, you can't even hardly fathom it, and I think that's what you said. It was amazing.
But you know what, Caleb? They can't happen if you don't hold God's hand and do it. I mean, God is doing it, but He needs a partner. Right. He needs someone to pick up that pickaxe and work the land. He needs someone to do it. Because most of the world expects, when they think about redemption, they think, oh yeah, it's going to come along like a strawberry shortcake, and everyone's going to have a great piece of the pie. It's going to be wonderful, but someone has to bake that cake, and someone has to put their hands into the earth and make it happen.
That's why I think it's so beautiful what you guys have done. Coming from the United States, you could have stayed there. Maybe you could say you couldn't now, seeing what God has done and brought you here to the land, but a lot of people are comfortable sitting in the States and not realizing what they're missing. But you guys chose to make that huge step and just come here and plant yourself in the land and see the beauty of what God's doing here. You've been majorly blessed.
We've been blessed.
We've been, I said to you before, we felt Abraham pulling us by the hand, pulling us across the sea to the land. I mean, a lot of people ask questions like, what are you doing in a dangerous place? We've had these questions asked many times over by family and friends in the States. You can live a comfortable life in America. What are you running on the hilltops over here in the Middle East when they tire Hezbollah is on the northern border, everyone, all the enemies from within and without trying to destroy the Jewish people. What do you want this kind of challenge? Look at the people, look around you. How many people have been killed? How can you raise your children? But our answer has always been that life is so short. God gives us 70 years, 80 years, 100 years. If you're lucky, 120 years here, but eventually we have to join the huge army above, in the heavens above. And we have to come, and what we can take to the future world is only one thing. We're not going to take materialism, all the money we made in this world, all that stuff is just going to be vanish and disappear. The only thing we're going to take to the upper world is the good deeds we've done in this world. And what have we done? Good deeds refer to what we've done to help people, of course, and more than anything, to help the land of Israel, to help the future and of God's word being emanated throughout the entire universe, come through His land, the land of Israel. And that's what we have to do. That's our task in this world. And it's a price, and maybe a price we're giving up certain things, but only for the greatest thing in the world is to really be close to God. And that, we believe, can only be done through the land of Israel and devoting your lives for the sake of Israel. And that's really what's motivating us. And it helps us overcome all our obstacles. You know, it hasn't been easy as a human being. It's difficult. Sure, we've been through hard times.
Right. You said you've been here, from the beginning, and you're seeing all these things. You said, you've been through your hard times. 22 people have been murdered throughout these hills, and you've seen this. How do you react to that as a family living here? What did you do with these things? When they came into your community, what is the reaction?
A very difficult personal trial that our family experienced was that our rabbi, the rabbi that gave my husband smicha, he became a rabbi on his knees, was murdered on the mountain, Mount HaYovel, the mountain of the curse. And my son at the time came and said, you know what, God is just not protecting us. There's something off about what's happening. He started with the enemy. And I took him over to the window. And we looked at the mountain of the blessing and the mountain of the curse, and I said, Yosef, God gives us free choice. We're not robots, and we don't perform His will as angels or as robots, but we have to choose. We can choose to be blessed, and we can choose not to be blessed, but the free choice is always there, and God's providence is protecting us, and His goodness is shining into us now. And I'm sure it's a question 10 years later, 12 years later that He's still asking, because I was not born here. I was not born into the reality that he was born into. I chose to come here. He was born here. But without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, the children of Itamar are so happy and proud to live here that the highest percentage of soldiers in elite forces come out of this community. So that was their response. They chose to take responsibility through the government, through the army, to matriculate into society, not to pull away, not to become a renegade, but within the growing redemption process, to become part of it and to do their best as soldiers, protecting not just Itamar but the whole Israel. Our response, our personal response, was setting up an organization that went out to collect, to build the infrastructure of this community, so that suddenly another playground was put in, another school had another library added to it, helping children's programs, and slowly a new synagogue is being built and a new study hall is being built. And the enemy that tries to come in and murder, okay, our response is build, 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 and build. And the community has grown against all odds, not only from natural birth, but from people coming from the outside and saying, I want to join your community, I want to live there. So who would dream of joining a community where they just heard that a family was massacred there? This is a stiff-necked people, because they believe this is God's will. This is the heart of Israel. You can't cut a heart out of a body.
This is amazing. I just think that, Mr. Moshe, you've definitely got something to add here, because being the mayor and helping to establish and really get this town of Itamar going, you've seen a lot.
Well, I've seen. Well, again, it's been, I think when we talk about miracles, there's no doubt that we came in, there was like just no one here but us and a few people. And talking to rocks, if we could turn rocks into diamonds, we'd be No, but that's what happened really. We just took these rocks and we just saw this community just developing one day after the next, here another little garden here, another this, another that. And slowly but surely, we're turning into my dream, again, is to turn Itamar to one of the most important cities of Israel one day. A city of holiness, a city of showing how the Bible comes to life, and people living a true, humble, pious life in the land. And that's what I've seen, again, as a community leader for many, many years. And again, as Leah mentioned, running an organization called Friends of Itamar, we go out to the world and we talk to people. And to be able to show them a slideshow and show them pictures of a place that was a wasteland, basically, and turned to life. This is prophecy coming true. This is Jeremiah saying, again, they'll be planting vineyards in the Shomron. This is not a joke. Samaria is really coming to life. And it's really happening. And people have to wake up and get on the train and realize that we're heading forward, we're moving. That's what it says in Isaiah and many places in the Bible. At the end of days, the nations of the world will throw away their idols, and they will realize, through the people of Israel, in the land of Israel, they don't want to come to the land and realize, connect themselves with the land, because they're realizing that God is revealing himself here in the land of Israel through the Jewish people, through the Torah. And that we see happening today, for 100%. We see what Zechariah says, they'll come along and they'll grab a hold of the, 10 will grab a hold of the tzitziot of a Jew and say, we heard that God is with you. What are they asking when they heard that God is with you? What do they mean by that? They see through the Jewish people that, prophecy is returning, and they'll see that the Jewish people are bearing the testimony of God in the world. And that's what we believe the purpose of the nation of Israel is as well. We're not only building the land of Israel for our own personal nation, but we believe that we have to be a light to the nations. The nations eventually will come and turn to Israel to be an example of Torah and true light in the world. That's going to come at the end of days. So
we invite you to come.